Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alecia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is
Twisted and Uncorked. So, welcome to another episode of Twisted and Uncorked. This is episode 25. We have made it. We are a quarter of a century.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Wait, that would be a...
Isn't that a quarter of a century?
Oh yeah, I guess it is.
Oh god.
But not
I
in
know I'm
terms
bad
of
at
like,
math and,
we haven't been doing this for a quarter of a century.
If we had been doing this for a quarter of a century, that would make me like 52, and
a century
really
is
math.
100.
Yeah, so if
but
I
it's 100 years.
Plus 27 is 45. 50. See, I got it fast. 52. That's 52, right? Nobody check my math. Nobody check it. They should know
I'm
better.
still stuck on the fact that the century thing.
Well, I look incredible for 52, and so do you. So there you go.
Oh, thanks. So before we get into the normal flow of things,
Yes.
I wanted to do a little update. The past 2 episodes we were recording and Amber Alerts kept going off for a little girl in Tennessee named Summer Wells. And this is sort of just a little update on her. It is now the 13th. She went missing on Tuesday, June 22nd, and as of today, the day that we're recording this, she is still missing. She's 5 years old. She's been missing for more than 3 weeks, and this is out of Hawkins County, Tennessee. There's a couple updates on the Nashville page that I just wanted to touch on.
And previously we had shared stories on our story about Summer. So
right on
I will
Instagram.
see what I can find for an updated post about her, and just so you guys can have a face to a name and keep an eye on that.
Yes. And sorry, I did just misspoke. She's been missing since June 15th, not June 22nd.
That's even more heartbreaking.
Yeah. Her parents said that she was last seen going into her little basement area to play with some of her toys. It's kind of like an off-the-house basement, like a lot of people who have tornadoes in their area would know. It's kind of like a little cellar, you know? Mm-hmm. And they live on a huge plot of land. There's a lot of cliffs and areas around the land, and so the police had to search really rugged terrain looking for her. They searched by ground, air, and with canine teams. As of right now, they have not seen anything. They did the spotlight searches, and 72 different agencies from Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio, Virginia, Georgia, and North Carolina have all been searching for her. They've searched 2,400 acres. Still, there's nothing. The TBI that's the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, has combed through 560 tips.
Oh my god.
They have combed through. They think that a vehicle was last seen in the area where she went missing. They just want to know who was in that vehicle and if they saw anything. That person is not a suspect at this time. The person's vehicle, a Toyota pickup truck, was seen in the area of Beach Creek Road and Ben Hill, which is where she went missing, in the late afternoon to early evening hours on June 14th or June 15th. Whoever that person was, if you saw anything that you can report to the police, or if that is you, let them know that's you so it doesn't look sketchy that you're like not answering
Coming
up to
forward,
something.
yeah.
Right. They just want your help. At this time, nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows if they're looking for a girl or for the body of a girl at this point. And
unfortunately, we know the likelihood of this, and that's really heartbreaking. But until she is found, we like to believe that there's still a chance. So
yeah, just looking for leads at this point. She was last seen again on June 15th wearing gray pants, a pink shirt, possibly even barefoot. She has blonde hair and blue eyes. Anyway, with all that being said, tell me a fun fact to lighten the mood.
Well, mine's not really a fun fact today.
Oh, gosh.
It's creepy.
Okay,
And
that's fun enough.
wanting to cover it one day, so I'm just going to give you a little info. So, we often talk about haunted places on the show, and I recently came across what is known to be the most haunted island in the world.
What is it?
It's the island of Poveglia. Its spooky origins are make it described as the most haunted place on Earth. Sorry, I misspoke. Not the most haunted island. The small island is located between Venice and Lido in the Venetian lagoon and has been there for more than 100 years, beginning in 1776. It was used to quarantine those suffering from the plague and other diseases, and it was also a mental hospital which closed in 1968. So many people were died there. Many were tortured and died there. And many people who have visited Poveglia over the years have returned having some of the most intense paranormal activity experiences ever.
That's creepy.
So I would like to cover it at some point. The island almost looks man-made. It's quite small. Kind of gives me Alcatraz vibes, like... that kind of thing. So, yeah, I would like to cover it one day for a haunted episode. But in case anybody's in, Italy and wants to check it out and report back, it's haunted as fuck, apparently.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it's spooky. So now we definitely need a drink because, this episode is gonna be an episode.
Speaking of Italy.
Yeah, speaking... Yes, so funny enough, on our hunt to find a red wine, or any wine rather, that Sierra and I can find at both her store and my store and still be able to drink along and have some sort of variety together, I came across a bottle of wine called Rosso. It's a red blend. In the corner of my eye, I thought it said Russo, which is Sierra's husband's last name, so I thought it was funny because it was in the Italian section, plus it was almost his last name, and Sierra has disclosed that her husband is also Italian, Sicilian.
Yeah.
So I thought it was funny. So by happenstance, she wasn't able to find another one that I had suggested that I'm hoping we still will at some point in life, so we'll save it. But she picked up this bottle and pointed out that it was almost kind of perfect based on what it said.
Yes. So this is actually a California wine, but it's weird because it's like California... like Italians in California.
Yes.
So the wine itself is from Napa, California. But anyway, the back of the bottle says, "Our heart-crafted red wine overflows with bold flavors of California sunshine, subtle notes of defiance, and a hint of tradition. The finish is seductive, full of fiery Italian passion. We salute the rebel drinkers and the truth seekers."
I think that sums us up here pretty well at Twisted and Uncorked.
It definitely sums up us specifically, but also it works out really well with the next 2 weeks' topic, because this episode and the next episode is a special topic month, and we allowed you listeners to pick our special topic this month, and the special topic is a lot about truth-seeking. These were suggestions from a couple Instagram users. 2 Instagram users submitted 2 specific cases that they wanted us to do. Both cases were instances of someone being convicted and then acquitted of murder.
Or in my
retried.
Case, convicted,
at least.
But everybody is like, did they do it?
Right, yes. Convicted, but maybe they shouldn't have been.
In other words, who really did it? Crimes.
Truth seekers.
Truth seeker crimes, yeah. So, with that said, cheers to episode 25. And,
should probably pour myself.
Buckle up. Yeah, right? What are you doing with your life? And buckle up for this wild, wild episode. I believe that this will be one that our listeners are likely familiar with, maybe have some of their own opinions on. We would encourage you guys to let us know, because even after the extensive research that I have done, and by extensive I mean scrambled from one website to another, trying to gather what accounts actually happened, because there are differing reports, as well as to try and see if anything was reported that might sway me in one way or another. So I'm going to remain a little bit indifferent throughout this episode, and I'm really excited to hear Sierra's theory at the end, as well as all of yours. So my case today comes from one of our listeners. I don't know if she wants her name used on the show, but her Instagram is Be Your Own Truth. She's been a wonderful listener. She actually has a bunch of case suggestions coming our way, so she's got that true crime passion, a real twisted human, so we love it. I am telling you about the case of Jeffrey Robert MacDonald, or better known as Dr. Jeffrey R. MacDonald. Sound familiar? Yeah, he's a doctor.
Does now that you said doctor. No, I'm thinking of Shepherd. And I don't mean from Grey's Anatomy. I mean the murderer.
I know. I know. It just all comes full circle because we did a Grey's Anatomy bitch and wine, so it was convenient. As all stories start from the beginning. Jeffrey Robert MacDonald was born on October 12th, 1943 in Jamaica, Queens, New York. He was the second of 3 children born to Robert and Dorothy MacDonald. He was raised in a quaint household on Long Island. His mother and father didn't have a lot of money, and with raising 3 kids, things were a little bit tighter. Robert MacDonald was a disciplinarian, and even though he never physically was violent towards any member of his family, emotionally things were a bit of a problem. He demanded complete obedience at all times and high achievements from his family. In high school, Jeffrey did just that. He became the president of the student council, was voted most popular, and voted most likely to succeed by his fellow classmates. He was also the king of his senior prom. The list goes on. In the 8th grade, he started dating a girl named Colette. He noticed her and a friend walking in the halls. He thought she was quite pretty. He introduced himself and at first tried to form a bit of a friendship with her before asking her to the movies. So, like, classic 1950s date. So cute.
Definitely. It's the more you speak, the more I'm like, I do know this. What is it? So I'm just like waiting for it to click.
Yeah. In the 9th grade, he'd stated that he had fallen in love with Colette. The following summer, unfortunately, while visiting a friend, Colette announced to Jeffrey that their relationship was over. And while he was heartbroken, he later formed another relationship with a girl named Penny Wells. In addition to his romances and various successes throughout secondary school, Jeffrey had also gained a 3-year scholarship for good grades to go to Princeton University and was enrolled in pre-med in 1962. During his second year of med school, he and his girlfriend Penny broke up, so like quite a substantial relationship. They dated from, like the 10th grade to his second year of university, really, so...
Yeah,
it was a significant relationship. However, he had already started to rekindle a friendship with Colette, who was going to Skidmore College in Saratoga. Their friendship quickly fell back into romance, and the two were dating again.
Wow, okay.
All right. Quick turnaround on both sides.
Yeah.
Colette's school was a little ways away, but they found a way to make it work. Jeffrey fell back in love hopelessly with Colette and was very protective of her. Jeffrey would always go to her, and he would hitchhike to visit on the weekends. Whenever he was able to get a break from school to go and visit, they wrote letters to each other often and talked on the phone whenever they could. In August of 1963, very quick into them dating again, Colette learned that she was pregnant, and she and Jeff decided to get married. Jeff got her family's approval, and the two were married that September on the 14th at Fifth Avenue Hotel. It was a luxurious wedding, despite the young couple and, kind of the shotgun marriage. But the pair was in love, and they had their honeymoon in Cape Cod. In April of 1964, Colette gave birth to their first baby girl, named Kimberly Catherine MacDonald. She dropped out of her college classes to raise her child, and Jeffrey continued his medical studies. Kimberly would grow up to be a sweet, slightly shy, incredibly smart, and quite a girly girl. Upon completing his 3-year scholarship at Princeton, Jeffrey worked briefly as a construction supervisor to save up some money before he and his family moved to Chicago in the summer of 1965, where he was accepted into the Northwestern University of Medical School. And initially, his family had to move into a small one-bedroom apartment, with Colette committed to maintaining the household and raising their daughter, while Jeffrey focused on his studies and worked a series of part-time jobs to assist with family finances. The following year, they had saved up enough money to relocate to a middle-class neighborhood, and just in time for their second child to be born, Kristen Jean. She was born on May 8th, 1967. She was fiercely protective of her older sister and would never hesitate to go to bat to defend her if she was hurt in any way. She was a little bit of a tomboy and loved her family. She was an absolute sweetheart. When Jeffrey graduated from medical school in 1968, he and his family relocated to Bergenfield, New Jersey, so that he can complete a one-year internship at Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York, specializing in thoracic surgery, which we know is your abdominal area. Jeffrey remembers...
The thorax.
Yes, exactly. As if you were a bug.
Right.
Can you tell Sierra and I look up bug facts too often?
Way too often.
Jeffrey remembers his internship year, much as described in the, famous show Grey's Anatomy, as a horrendous one. For both himself and his wife Colette. He would work insanely long hours, and when he was home, he was far too exhausted to engage in his family and thus had limited interactions with them, as well as his young daughters. I can only imagine that multiple moves, raising a family, not seeing each other, etc., would start to show a strain on even the strongest of marriages, but little tiffs would occur between the couple, and that was later reported by multiple witnesses throughout their marriage. It does happen. And, from what I can see, she's been pretty patient, raising kids, moving wherever he needs to go, so... relatively supportive. I, at the end of the day, would want to see my husband too, so makes sense. When Jeffrey finally completed his internship in 1969, he splurged, and he and Colette vacationed, he and Colette vacationed and went on vacation. So, shows you where I was when I was editing these. He splurged, and he and Colette vacationed in Aruba together and did some rekindling, some relaxing, and, kind of patched up that separation that was happening in their marriage.
Nice.
In June 28th, 1969, Jeffrey enlisted in the U.S. Army and was sent to Fort Sam Houston in Texas to undergo a 6-week physician's base training course. While at Fort Sam Houston, he also volunteered to be assigned in the Army's Special Forces, the Green Berets, to become a Special Forces physician. Because of this, Jeffrey was relocated yet again to Fort Benning in Georgia, where he completed a paratrooper training course. And although when he had gone into the Army knowing that he may likely be deployed to serve time in the Vietnam War, he later learned that as a Green Beret doctor, he was unlikely to serve overseas, and I think that was possibly one of the reasons why he did that.
Yeah.
He has a young family, it makes sense. Later that August, Jeffrey reported to the 3rd Special Forces Group in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to work as the group's surgeon. This was yet another move for his family, and they moved into 544 Castle Drive in a section of the base for other families of married officers, and they actually had the privilege of being secured by military police. So I'm curious, Sierra, did you have to guard bases or military family members ever?
The only thing that I did was guard bases.
Yeah. Ah, okay.
My whole thing, officers usually live on base, and literally all I was allowed to do was patrol the base. So there were certain days we were assigned to housing.
Okay, cool. Interesting.
Lots of domestic stuff happens over there.
Yeah, I would think so.
Mostly drunk people, but
tensions run high, apparently.
Yeah.
I was just curious. The MacDonald family quickly became popular among their neighbors, even though other family members would occasionally note the only downside was Colette and Jeffrey's bickering, which I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
On December 10th, 1969, the 3rd Special Forces Group was deactivated, and Jeffrey started at the 6th Special Forces Group to serve as a preventative medical officer. Luckily, they didn't have to move again, so that was good news. And with the news of yet another family member on the way, avoiding moving was obviously a priority. Colette was now 3 months pregnant with a little boy. Happy news. Shortly before Christmas of that same year, Jeffrey brought his daughter, shortly before Christmas that same year, in 1969, Jeffrey bought his daughters a Shetland pony. So they literally got a pony for Christmas.
Where the fuck did he keep the pony? They don't have very large properties.
I know.
On basis.
He kept them at some sort of stables.
Yeah.
This seems, I wrote in my notes, this seems impractical, but Jeffrey got news that they would likely be relocated to Connecticut, and there was a farm close by to the base there that they would be able to keep the pony.
So got it.
A little bit of preemptive planning there. Kimberly and Kristen were obviously ecstatic, and they chose to name the pony Trooper. During this time, Colette described her life to family and friends as, quote, never being so normal or happy. The family was content as they would soon have a little boy joining them in July. By 1970, Jeffrey had earned the rank of captain. This man, I wrote in my notes, this man never stops, and this was not going to be enough of a victory for him. Obviously, this is pointing to his upbringing and, expecting achievements and excellence. He's always on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. So when his Green Beret tour was over, he was going to study advanced medical training at Yale University. So he's smart.
Yeah.
He's well trained in the military. And he's got a young family. So on the afternoon of February 16th, Jeffrey took Kimberly and Kristen to feed and ride Trooper at the stables. The trio then returned home at about 5:45 p.m. Jeffrey showered and changed into an old pair of blue pajamas, like a flannel jammy set. After the family had finished dinner, Colette left to attend an evening class at Fort Bragg's North Carolina University Extension. So she was continuing her studies now because she had previously dropped out to care for their daughter. According to Jeffrey's description of the evening, he and his daughters played horsey. He allowing his daughters to ride on his back as if he was Trooper, of whom they loved so much. And I remember doing this as a kid with my dad, so relatable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my kids still, my kids aren't that old. They still do this. And recently I've been making them give Stanley pony rides. I'm like, you need to do this to me. Stanley gets to get on your back. You're the horse now.
Meanwhile, Stanley's like, ah!
Yeah, he's like, this is not cool.
Mom, this is only fun for one of us. Put me down. That's hilarious. After this, he put Kristen to bed at approximately 7 p.m. Since Kimberly was a little bit older, she was allowed to stay up a little longer, and she was playing a game at the coffee table. Jeffrey dozed off for about an hour before watching one of Kimberly's favorite television shows with her, called Laugh In, which I'm not familiar with, before his eldest daughter also went to bed. Colette returned from school at about 9:40 p.m., and the two sat on the couch watching television together before Colette decided to go to bed midway through The Tonight Show. At 3:42 a.m. on February 17th, 1970, dispatchers at Fort Bragg received an emergency phone call from Jeffrey MacDonald, who faintly spoke into the receiver saying, quote, "Help, 544 Castle Drive stabbing. Help, 544 Castle Driving stabbing. Hurry." The operator then heard the sound of the receiver clattering against the wall or the phone, because, they're corded telephones back then.
Uh-huh.
As if he had called and run away from the phone in a hurry. Within 10 minutes, responding military police arrived at the address, believing that they were likely responding to some sort of domestic disturbance, which makes sense because Sierra said that stuff like that is common.
Mm-hmm.
They found the front door closed and locked, and the house was dark inside. When no one answered the door, they circled to the back of the house where police discovered the back screen door closed and unlocked and the back door wide open. Upon entering...
The screen door was closed?
Yes, but the door was open. So like as if you were letting in a breeze, but it's February, so in North Carolina, so I'm not familiar with the weather there, but if it's anything like here, it's not warm.
It's not warm.
Upon entering, the sergeant walked up into the master bedroom before running down to the front of the house, shouting to get medical personnel there now. Colette MacDonald was discovered sprawled on the floor of the master bedroom. She was laying on her back with one eye open, one boob exposed. She had been repeatedly clubbed all over her body, with both forearms later being found to be broken. The pathologist noted that these wounds would have likely been inflicted as if she was raising her arms to protect her face. And we know that, like, look at it's not a very big bone. She had been stabbed 21 times in the chest with an ice pick, 16 times in the neck and the chest with a knife, and her trachea was severed in 2 places. A bloodied and torn pajama top was placed over her body, and a paring knife was laying next to her. Beside her, Jeffrey MacDonald was found laying face down, alive but wounded, his head on Colette's chest and one arm wrapped around her. As military personnel approached, he instructed for them to check my kids. I heard my kids crying.
Okay.
We're just gonna absorb the scene here.
Don't like that, but
no,
continue.
Don't like it either. 5-year-old Kimberly was found in her bed, having been repeatedly bludgeoned all over her body. She was stabbed in the neck with a knife between 8 and 10 times. She laid on her left side. Her skull had been fractured from at least 2 blows to the right side of her head, and one wound on her face had caused her cheekbone to protrude through her skin. Ugh. The wounds to Kimberly's head were so severe in nature that they caused bruising to her brain, a coma, and death shortly after. It is believed that she died relatively quickly, but no little girl should have to endure something like this, and let alone die that way. So,
at least she didn't suffer for long.
Yeah.
God, jeez.
We need another swig, because that made Alecia tear up in the eyeballs. Across the hallway, 2-year-old Kristen was found lying in her bed as well, also laying on her left side, with a baby bottle close to her mouth, as if she had fallen asleep with it. She had been stabbed 33 times across the chest, neck, hands, and back with a knife, and 15 times with an ice pick. So think about how small a 2-year-old is.
Yeah.
That is insanity. 2 knife wounds had penetrated her heart, and the pathologist later attributed this to the what killed her. The ice pick wounds were noted to be quite shallow, so just fucking cruel. The pathologist also noted that the injuries to her hands were likely defensive wounds. No. She's 2 years old. Sorry, guys. This one's tough. I warned ya. Above the master bedroom, the word pig was written in 8-inch capital letters, and the blood that was used to write the word was later determined to belong to Colette. Does any part of this scene or this attack sound familiar to any of our listeners?
Well, the writing on the walls, and she was pregnant, right?
Correct. The Manson family murders?
Yes. I was like, why can't I think of his name? The only thing I can think of right now is Helter Skelter.
Yes. Helter Skelter. Exactly. So, guys, we are dealing with the 1970s here. Yeah. It is towards the end of the 1970s, mind you, at this point. However, it is still the heightened time of, quote, satanic panic. There was a lot of satanic cults, such as the Manson family, who wreaked havoc on various bypassers, engaged in drugs, believed that the police were completely against them, referred to them as pigs, etc., rode around a little bus doing their own damn thing. So this whole scene screamed the murder of Sharon Tate to me.
Yes.
Sharon Tate was 8 months pregnant at the time of her murder. The word pig was also written on the wall in her home. Her fellow friends were also murdered, and it was a group of people that had broken in with the attack meant to be on her husband. However, he was out of town, and they were all unfortunately sacrificed as a result.
Yeah.
So Keep that in mind, Manson family murders. Having received resuscitative measures and coming to, Jeffrey sat upright, exclaimed, "Jesus Christ, look at my wife. I'm going to kill those goddamned acid heads." He was immediately taken to the nearby Womack Hospital, shouting, "Let me see my kids, let me see my kids," as he was carried out of his home on a stretcher. Investigators believed that he was under the impression that his kids were okay at this point.
Goodness.
Which we know they were not.
Yeah.
At the hospital, but keep that picture in your brain too. Put that in your back pocket also. At the hospital, medical staff discovered the wounds that Jeffrey had suffered were much in less quantity and much less severe than the injuries inflicted upon his wife and kids. He had suffered cuts, bruises, had fingernail scratches to his face and chest, and although none of these wounds were life-threatening or required stitches, he was also found to have a mild concussion, and this is likely why he'd gone to sleep when investigators were investigating the home, and why he was resuscitated. We know that when you have a concussion, your body's natural reaction is to go to sleep, but that's actually the worst thing you can do. Mm-hmm. Fun fact for anybody. He also had a single stab wound between two of his ribs on his right torso. The wound was described by a surgical staff member as a clean, small, sharp incision measuring 5 inches and an inch in depth. So 5/8 wide and an inch deep.
I don't like that he called it an incision.
I don't either. This stab wound had caused Jeffrey's lung to partially collapse, and he was released from the hospital after 9 days of recovery. After his recovery, Jeffrey was taken into questioning to get his account of the evening. And this is what he said. He said at about 2 a.m. on February 17th, he had woken up on the couch, gone and washed the evening's dinner dishes before he started to head up to bed himself. When he got to the master bedroom, he found his daughter Kristen on his side of the bed and found that she had wet the bed. So he didn't want to wake either Kristen or Colette, so he scooped up his daughter and put her into her own bed so that at least she could sleep on dry sheets. He then took an extra blanket from his daughter's room and went back downstairs to the couch, where it was dry and pee-free. Mm-hmm. He said that he woke up to Colette and Kimberly screaming, Colette shouting, "Jeff, Jeff, help us." As he rose from the couch and ran to their aid, he was attacked by 3 male intruders, 1 black and 2 white. The shorter of the 2 white men wore a lightweight, possibly surgical glove. A 4th intruder was described as a white female with long blonde hair, possibly a wig, wearing high-heeled, knee-high leather boots and a white floppy hat partially covering her face. The individual stood by holding a candle that was lit, chanting, "Acid is groovy, kill the pigs." I'm trying really hard to keep my opinions to myself here.
I'm trying really hard not to laugh. I know that, people such as the Mansons were real life, but I can't even picture them chanting "acid is groovy, kill the pigs." Like, that sounds like the most lame thing ever, but also I was born in the 90s, so what do I know?
Yeah, so we're... maybe our lingo that we have learned about this time and period was a little bit different. However, it seems a little bit out there to me. Jeffrey claimed that the 3 males then had attacked him with a club and an ice pick, while the female intruder continued to shout, "Hit him again," cheering them on. During the struggle, his pajama top was pulled up over his head to his wrists, and he used this as a bound garment to, kind of ward off various thrusts and attacks from the ice pick, which makes sense because you can pull it tight and you can kind of use it to your advantage. However, he was eventually overcome by his assailants, knocked unconscious in the living room end of the hallway leading towards the bedrooms, so where he was trying to get to. When he regained consciousness, it was quiet. The intruders had left, and he stumbled from room to room, attempting mouth-to-mouth resuscitation upon Kristen and Kimberly with no avail, before discovering his wife. He had pulled the small paring knife from Colette's chest, tossed it onto the floor, and attempted in vain to find her pulse. He then draped his pajama jacket over her body and had phoned for help.
But I thought he didn't know if his kids were hurt or not.
Exactly. Within minutes of the discoveries at the MacDonald home, military police were instructed to check everyone coming and going from Fort Bragg, seeking 2 white men, 1 black man, and 1 white woman with long blonde hair and hopefully a floppy hat, in an effort to apprehend the 4 intruders that, he had said attacked them and his family. Despite these efforts, military failed to locate the 4 intruders, and the initiative was abandoned earlier that next day. Although, one police officer said that on his way to the scene, so the night of the 911 call, to respond to it, he had seen a woman standing in the darkness at about 3:50 a.m., wearing knee-high boots and a floppy hat. He said that if he had not been heading to an emergency call, that he would have stopped and questioned why she was out so late and if she needed any help. However, since he was going to a call, he moved on.
Okay.
Shortly after daylight on February 17th, investigators recovered the murder weapons just outside of the back door of the MacDonald residence. The instruments that were found to be used in the murder were an old hickory kitchen knife, an ice pick, and a 31-inch long piece of lumber with 2 blue threads attached with blood. All 3 were quickly determined to have come from the MacDonald's home. The piece of lumber was found outside with the firewood. The kitchen knife had been taken from the knife block, and the ice pick was, I don't know what you would fucking use an ice pick for.
Yeah, I always get confused. Like, why the fuck does anyone have an ice pick?
For rock climbing?
I mean, 70s.
For ice climbing?
I don't fucking know.
For ice climbing.
No.
I just made myself sound like a moron.
Yeah. There's no way.
She's like, yeah, you did. Yeah. Friendship, guys. All 3 were determined to have come from the house, like I said, and all 3 had been wiped clean of fingerprints, although Jeffrey claimed that he had never seen any of these items before. As Army investigators studied the evidence, they were quick to disbelieve Jeffrey's account of what had happened, as they found very little evidence to support his version of the events. Although he was trained in unarmed combat, the living room where he had supposedly fought for his life against 3 male assailants showed very few signs of a struggle, apart from the coffee table having been knocked onto its side, a pile of magazines on the floor, a flower plant that had fallen over and with dirt spilling out. But what investigators found strange was that Valentine's Day cards were still propped up upright on a table nearby. So if a struggle was ensuing, there would be a little bit of a breeze happening. Yeah, that would be the first thing that gets knocked over, right? Just keep that in your mind. Questioning the neighbors also revealed that they had heard no sounds of a struggle or disturbance within the household in the early evening hours. However, they had heard Colette shouting in an angry voice and chalked it up to one of the couple's usual tiffs. A 16-year-old neighbor girl who had occasionally babysat for the MacDonald family informed investigators that the 2 seemed aloof and indifferent towards each other in the months prior to the murders. By February 23rd, the search for the 4 intruders was called off. In addition to the lack of damage or even disarray inside the household, no fibers from Jeffrey's torn pajama top were found in the living room.
I was going to ask
where he claimed the garment had been when it was torn in his struggle with the intruders. Fibers from the pajama top were, however, found beneath Colette's body, in the bedrooms of both of his daughters, and 1 fiber from this garment was also found under Kristen's fingernail. A single fragment of skin was recovered from beneath Colette's fingernails, although this evidence was later lost in transportation, and I wrote in my notes, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Bloodstained splinters, likely sourcing from the section of lumber recovered close to the back door or this club that was being used in the attack, were recovered from all 3 bedrooms of the apartment, but not the room where MacDonald was claimed to have been attacked with said club. No blood or fingerprints were found on either telephone. Jeffrey had claimed that he used to call for help after checking on each of his family members and attempting to resuscitate them. Furthermore, the blood-stained tip of a surgical glove was found beneath the headboard, where the blood inscription was written, "Pigs." The glove was identical in composition to the medical supply Jeffrey had kept in his family's kitchen. Because he's a doctor, so he's got surgical gloves. Makes sense. Although it had rained and this is a further point against him, although it had rained the night of February 16th and 17th, Jeffrey specifically claimed that the female intruder boots were all wet with rainwater just dripping off of them. But the only footprint that was observed at the scene was a bloody, bare footprint located in Kristen's bedroom, leading from the child's bed in the direction of the doorway. No other footprints were found, and if somebody was walking around through blood in wet boots, that would spread even faster. By mid-March, the results of the forensic testing of the blood, hair, and fiber samples within the home also contradicted Jeffrey's accounts of his movements, and further convinced investigators that he was probably the man responsible. For example, Kimberly's blood was also found on his pajama top, even though Jeffrey had claimed he was not wearing this garment while in her room, attempting resuscitation. Jeffrey's own blood was located in significant quantities in only 2 locations of the home: in front of the kitchen cabinet containing the rubber gloves, and on the right side of the hallway bathroom sink. Investigators also questioned as to why Colette's blood was found in Kristen's room, even though all 3 victims were found in separate rooms, suggesting that they had been attacked separately. Moreover, blood evidence indicated Kimberly had been attacked as she had entered the master bedroom. Investigators questioned why home intruders would bother to carry her back to her bedroom and continue their attack. All 4 members of the MacDonald family also had different blood types, a statistical anomaly that assisted investigators in determining the movements of each family member throughout the household and the subsequent theory or likely scenario that unfolded that evening. So that's really interesting. They all had different blood types.
Either extremely interesting or a lie. Like, that seems too easy.
It seems too easy, right? It specifically says it's a statistical anomaly that 4 members of the same family would have a different blood type.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me.
So keep that in mind, too. That's a point for Jeff. Upon the assumption of the 4 individuals discovered by responding military police, there were only 4 people in the household on the early morning hours of February 17th. Investigators were able to reconstruct the scenario that they believe happened via blood typing and the nature of the severity of each wound discovered on each individual family member. So this is what investigators say happened.
Now I'm thinking, now that you pointed out the statistical anomaly, and also I'm remembering that it's the fucking 70s and they couldn't do actual DNA. Did the investigators just get all the fucking blood wrong? Now that's the only thing on my mind. All the blood evidence
they lost the
is
skin
now
sample
confused.
underneath Colette's fingernails.
Yeah, there's still a lot of sketchy shit, but every bit of blood evidence now, I'm like, I don't know if I can believe any of that.
Exactly. Okay. This is where I am in my brain. And where our lovely listener is. She says she says, quote, "I can't shake this. Things don't add up to 100% guilt." So this is what investigators believe happened. An argument or a fight ensued between Jeffrey and Colette. It likely began in the master bedroom, possibly over the issue of Kristen repeatedly wetting the bed on his side of the bed while she was sleeping there, or any of the other marital issues that friends and families claimed that they had, or these tiffs that it would ensue. Investigators speculated that the argument turned physical, and that Colette had probably hit him on the forehead with a hairbrush or some other object that she had been holding, resulting in a small mark on his forehead, which failed to break the skin. As a result, he retaliated, hitting her, first with his fists, then beating her with a piece of lumber that he found outside. Kimberly, whose blood and brain serum were found in the doorway of the master bedroom.
I don't like that.
I don't either. May have walked in after hearing the commotion between her mom and dad and was struck at least once on the head, possibly by accident, maybe on purpose. Believing that Colette was now dead, Jeffrey carried the mortally wounded Kimberly back to her bedroom. After stabbing her, MacDonald then proceeded to Kristen's room, carrying the club he had used on both his daughter Kimberly and his wife Colette. He intended to dispose of the last remaining potential witness in the household, but before he could do so, Colette, whose blood was found on Kristen's bed covers and on the wall of one wall of her bedroom, apparently regained consciousness, stumbled into her youngest daughter's bedroom, and threw her own body over Kristen in a desperate attempt to protect her. After killing both of them, Jeffrey wrapped Colette's body in a sheet and carried her back to the master bedroom, leaving the smudged footprint matching her blood type as he exited Kristen's bedroom. So
Where's the sheet?
Where the fuck is the sheet? I know. I think they're just assuming that based on the lack of blood trailing from one room to the other, but nothing has ever been found. Investigators then theorized that Jeffrey attempted to cover up the murders using the articles on the Manson family murders that he had recently read in the March 1970 issue of Esquire. Investigators found it in the living room. Putting on surgical gloves from the medical supply in his kitchen, he went up to the master bedroom where he used Colette's blood to write the word pig on the headboard. He then laid his torn pajama top over her dead body and repeatedly stabbed her in the chest with an ice pick, then discarded of the weapons close to the back door on the property after wiping them clean of fingerprints. Finally, Jeffrey decided to take a scalpel blade from that same medical supply closet, entered the adjacent bathroom, and stabbed himself once in the chest between the ribs while standing beside the sink, which is where the blood was found, before disposing of the surgical gloves. He then used the family telephone to call an ambulance before lying beside Colette's body, waiting for the military police to arrive. Where are we sitting thus far?
I don't buy that story at all.
The investigator story or Jeffrey's story?
The investigator story. I don't know if I think that Jeffrey's innocent, but I don't buy that story.
Bum, bum, bum. They identify some suspects. In August of 1970, one officer was approached by a delivery man named William Posey, who had claimed the blonde woman that Jeffrey MacDonald had stated attacked his family may be a local 17-year-old drug addict and local police informant named Helena Whirl Stockley. According to the mailman, Helena had been in the company of 2 or 3 young males in a car parked outside of her apartment at approximately 4 a.m. on the evening of the murders. So if we remember, the ambulance was called at 3:42. The same mailman claimed that Helena had been wearing boots, a floppy hat, after February 17th even, dressed in black on the dates of the funerals of both Kimberly, Kristen, and Colette. Also stating to him that she, quote, did not remember what she did on the date of the murders. He later relayed this information at the hearing for Jeffrey MacDonald, adding that Helena had informed him months later that she and her boyfriend could not marry until, quote, we go out and kill some people.
What?
Helena was located and questioned, although her answers were vague, contradictory, and contradictory regarding her whereabouts on February 17th. She recalled being in the company of her boyfriend Gregory Mitchell on the night of February 16th and going out for a ride in the car in the early hours of the following day, driving aimlessly, but claimed to have been, quote, so far out on mescaline that she could not say which is a type of acid, if anybody's wondering, which she could not say whether or not she had been at the MacDonald house or not. Although witnesses had claimed that Helena had admitted her involvement in the murders, with several people also remembering her wearing those same clothes that was described by Jeffrey MacDonald on the date in question, she was not subpoenaed to testify. And this, I don't know why. Procedural inaccuracies regarding the investigative conduct into Helena were also highlighted at the beginning of this hearing. So, why wasn't she brought in? So now we know that a police member said that he had seen her. Mm-hmm. A mailman said that he had seen her, and that she had been wearing this outfit.
Yeah, that's sketchy. But maybe Jeffrey had also seen her wearing that outfit, and that's why he blamed it on her.
Right? He's like not remembering that it's significant in his mind, and he's just seen this. It's just real enough that it could be bought, kind of thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
One particular piece of evidence that I thought was important to add here, because now we're going to start getting into the testimonies and the subsequent trial for Jeffrey MacDonald. All of these are transcribed and public, so I would encourage our listeners to go and read them and kind of get an idea for yourself after you've heard all of this and the most important parts that I felt, just because obviously Sierra and I try and keep every episode down to a specific time window, and I want to leave room for, theories and discussion and the interesting parts. So please go and read those transcripts. I will link them in our show notes as well as in my sources for the episode on our website, because I really want to know what you guys think too, because so far things aren't adding up on either side for either of us. So we're not really sure where to sit. So who done it? Who really done it? One testimony of Jeffrey MacDonald's clinical psychologist testified that after a series of tests on Jeffrey, he revealed an extraordinary absence of anxiety, depression, and anger despite his military career. And he also reported that it was unlikely that Jeffrey would be able to do something like this. This was later waived to be admissible in court. So I understand that is a blanket statement. Like, no, this person couldn't have done that, which is likely why the judge opted to not have it. Yes.
Is that what you meant? Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Not admissible, but inadmissible, yes. So that it wasn't able to be used. So this particular psychologist's evaluation of Jeffrey wasn't able to be used, which I don't think is fair. But on the counter side, this also wasn't able to be used. That despite his entire family being gone, he was able to muster massive denial to such degree that the impacts that, quote, impact the recent events of his life as being blunted. So I looked up what that meant, and it was just like he more viewed himself as a victim or perhaps somewhat of a martyr rather than somebody that had just lost their entire family.
Okay.
So on the one hand, he doesn't experience
the
anxiety,
opposite of survivor's guilt.
Exactly. So he doesn't experience anger, depression, or anxiety about this, and it is likely, like in his professional opinion, Jeffrey MacDonald is not capable of doing something like this. But then on the other hand, he looks at himself as being victimized or a martyr, and he's looking at these events in like a shallowed way.
Yeah, like not... I survived.
Exactly.
Victory to me.
Yes, not like my entire family is fucking gone. So on both sides, none of this is admissible, but it's important to note, I think. So another thing I thought was important to note is that Colette's family initially believed that Jeffrey was innocent. Both of the Kassabs had not testified in his hearing, informing the press that, quote, and this is her dad speaking on behalf of both of them, "My wife and I feel very strongly about Captain MacDonald's innocence. After all, it was our daughter and our 2 grandchildren that were brutally butchered." However, by November 1970, they had grown suspicious of Jeffrey's repeated reluctance to provide them with a copy of the transcript of this hearing, which they thought was odd. And in an apparent effort to discourage his efforts to obtain the copy of this transcript in pursuit of the real killers, Jeffrey told his in-laws that he and some army colleagues had actually tracked down, tortured, and even murdered one of the 4 alleged murderers. Obviously, he's like, that's fucking far-fetched. Like, what? You've been incarcerated pretty much this whole time. How have you been able to track down these alleged assailants? So,
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, right? And like, what the fuck?
But at the same time, maybe it would help give her parents closure to lie about it. You know those lies that it's like, I'm lying for your own good.
Yeah, like he's doing it out of the goodness of his heart rather than to make himself seem like this big hero or prove his innocence
it's
even
still
further.
weird.
It's still weird,
but,
for sure.
Yeah.
So their allegiance to Jeffrey kind of shifts from here. And rightfully so. Other items that weren't admissible in court during Jeffrey MacDonald's trial was Jeffrey MacDonald's pajama top, which I think is telling, because if he used it the way that he said he did, it would be telling on that front. But
yeah, that's
from
a
the
huge
fiber
piece of evidence
and what he said happened the night of the murders, that doesn't add up. So on the one hand, it would have hurt Jeffrey, but on the other hand, it could have helped him had somebody actually been able to investigate that piece of fabric and use it in court. I think that was a huge oversight. Kind of like, I get that they get to pick and choose, like Sierra and I are covering the staircase for our staircase summer, baby, for our recaps and discussions for patrons this for the entire summer. And on the one hand, Michael Peterson's shorts are used in court and only a mention of his shirt is used, but it's never actually pulled into evidence. So I'm not sure what measures are taken or what happens to decide what is fair to be used in court.
I'm
in these
80%
instances.
sure the prosecution has to be the one to say we want to use it.
Okay.
And then the defense gets to know. I think that's how it goes. I could be wrong. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure the prosecution brings it in
brief
first.
Googling, and all that it told me was instances where that hasn't been the case or it has been the case. So it wasn't helpful. It was just like a case-by-case basis of how they they bring evidence into the courtroom. So
I'm pretty sure the prosecution is like, well, we're going to use this, and the defense has to like either say, I don't think you should, or okay, let me build on it. But in both the staircase episodes and in this case, you'd think the prosecution would want the shirt.
Right? Because if it was used the way that he said it did,
then he looks like a liar, and that helps the prosecution's case.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't there was no evidence of it being used that way, according to the investigators.
Exactly.
So why wouldn't they want it?
It's interesting, for sure. So, Jeffrey MacDonald was brought to trial in July of 1979 with 3 counts of murder charges against him. He was tried in Raleigh, North Carolina, and pleaded not guilty to the charges. And this is another thing that I think is interesting, is that they would not allow Helena to testify. They said that they had basically gotten the confession out of her and that she was believed to be an unreliable witness due to her addiction to drugs at the time of the murder. However, she stated time and time again that she had a guilty conscience and that she wanted to talk about it. So whether or not she remembers the events of that night, she knows that something is wrong. And she was, wearing the outfit in question. So to me, that seems too good to be true.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, what?
Well, I don't know, because in my opinion, it's like, people who are addicts already feel guilty about being addicts and maybe might try and falsely confess to something like this. For one, because when you do go to jail, you get help with being an addict. You get housing, you get showers, you get meals. Like, depending on her situation, if she was an addict so extreme that she was like living in squalor, being in jail might be better off for her. And people falsely confess for the craziest reasons all the time. So being an addict and not knowing for sure isn't that crazy.
And, owning a floppy hat and knee-high boots isn't crazy either. So,
yeah.
So under oath, she denied any concrete involvement in the murders or any knowledge of who have committed the acts at the time of Jeffrey's trial. She was insistent that she was unable to recall her whereabouts on the dates of the murders again and again. She emphasized her extensive drug use in 1970 and the intervening years, adding that the night of February 16th to 17th of 1970 was, quote, by no means the first or the last night that she was able to recall her whereabouts. So this happened frequently for her.
Right.
Following this testimony, the prosecution argued that they should be able to dismiss this because she couldn't concretely say one way or another. So even though she wasn't brought to testify in court, they still did take her, like what she had to say. On August 20th, he refused, the judge refused the introduction of this testimony, so it wasn't able to be used in court to help Jeff Jeffrey in any way. Initially, Jeffrey was given, after the investigation and after, forensics was able to get in there and look at everything, he was given the opportunity to tell his story again, in which he stuck with the same story. They questioned MacDonald about his family, about his relationship with his family, how he felt about his incoming family member, how he felt about his marriage, how his friends and family. He said that he was ecstatic about his incoming son, that he and Colette had grown up together. They shared life experiences, and he never wanted this to be the way that she left him. Like, he never predicted this. He then produced several family photos, artifacts, items of sentiment, really. He pulled out photos, circumstances surrounding each photograph, and to people around him, it really believed like he was that family man that he portrayed himself to be, and he was, unfortunately, a victim of a brutal attack. It's also noted that on many occasions, in his time in the base, Jeffrey was approached by various drug users that lived on base, asking that they fill prescriptions for heroin and cocaine, which we know were used in medical practices in the 1970s. To avoid losing his medical license or, having any stipulations against him, he denied, filling any of these prescriptions, and an attack was brought against him because of this. Shortly after 1980, Jeffrey MacDonald's supporters, of which there are many, so he's been in prison this whole time, hired a retired FBI special agent and private investigator named Ted Gunderson to assist in overturning his conviction. Gunderson contacted Helena Stockley, who on this occasion allegedly confessed that she and 5 members of what she described as a, quote, drug cult had developed a deep grudge against Jeffrey MacDonald for this refusal, so for him refusing to fill these prescriptions for them. As such, she and other members of this group plotted revenge against Jeffrey's family, specifically intending to murder his entire family, but leave him scared enough that he would likely, comply with future requests, which is like the stupidest logic ever, because it's like, you've already taken everything from him, so fuck you, if that's the case.
Yeah, now he's definitely not going to come to life.
Exactly, right? So
like, I have nothing left to lose.
Exactly. So that's the stupidest That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard. So, according to Helena, she had called the MacDonald residence late the evening of February 16th to determine if all members of the family were present. Colette had answered the phone, indicating to her that they were, because they saw her leave for her classes.
Mm-hmm.
She had said that the group then, quote, dropped mescaline, so that acid, before driving to Jeffrey MacDonald's residence. She and 4 others entered the house, which I thought was interesting because Jeffrey only reported 4 altogether, including Helena. So now there's 5 people. Entered the house and confronted Jeffrey, intent on him signing the prescription pad, although the situation quickly deteriorated when he refused. Jeffrey attempted to fight his attackers before quickly lapsing into unconsciousness. Helena alleged that she ran into the master bedroom to find, quote, death to all pigs, or something like that scrawled on the headboard, and 2 of her friends bludgeoning Colette on the bed while she was, woken from her sleep, which we know that it just said pigs. Mind you, this is somebody that's used heavy drugs, so take her account as a grain of salt. But it's important to mention that she has come forward with this information. She also was adamant that she had worn a floppy hat on the evening in question and knee-high boots. On April 16th, 2007, real jump forward, Jeffrey MacDonald's attorneys filed an affidavit on behalf of Helena, Helena's mother stated that her daughter had, quote, twice confessed to her that she was present in the MacDonald house on the evening of the murders, and that her daughter was afraid of prosecutors and what may come her way. Jeffrey requested to expand this then, he wanted a retrial. He wanted to appeal after these new confessions and interviews had come out in 2007. But this was subsequently denied. Jeffrey's motions regarding the DNA results as well at the house were denied. He wanted the DNA tested that was, present on his shirt, present on other places in his house. But like what we know, the piece of DNA that was underneath Colette's fingernails was gone. The only pieces of skin fragments underneath either of the girls' fingernails were Jeffrey's. The fingerprints had been wiped off of the murder weapons, so what is there to test?
Well, the blood.
Yes, that.
Because in the 70s they just used blood types. That doesn't mean it was their blood.
No.
Any of the attackers could have had the same blood type.
No, and that's what this
70s.
is. So this, to me, is the biggest piece of evidence, is that they've never tested the blood. They've said that all 4 members of the family had different blood types, which statistically is an anomaly. If you're attacking somebody back that's hurting you, they would leave blood or, some sort of DNA on the premises while you're attacking them.
Yeah.
However, the way that it's been reported and what was found in each room, it doesn't add up either. So this is why I'm so what? Several individuals believe, Jeffrey MacDonald's innocence and are determined to clear his name. In 2017, he said, quote, to a reporter, "If it takes me saying I killed my family to get parole or to get out of here and go home, I'm never going home." He contends that he has withheld 2 unidentified 22-inch long synthetic hairs found in the hairbrush, which was not made available at his defense trial, and a minute spot for either blood type O or type B origin. Either of this blood type was either of his daughter Kristen or an intruder of some sort. It was uncovered in the hallway, and his supporters also point to the unsourced black woolen fibers that were eventually found under Colette MacDonald's mouth, like she had been gagged with something. And shoulder is evidence of intruders, which, are deliberately being withheld in his defense, which I don't think is right either. So they're not able to use anything about his sound mind, other than the fact that he's kind of like, "Woo, I survived." They're not able to use any of this evidence about the blood. They're not able to test the DNA. And they're not testing any of the other fibers that were found in the home. So to me, it seems like one of those investigations that they just want to tie it up in a nice little bow. But on the other hand, other things aren't adding up. You know, like the blood patterns in the home, the events that Jeffrey said happened, the lack of disarray in the home, you know, how the girls were found, where their blood was found, etc. So it's like, I'm not getting answers on either side here. Which is why this is the most frustrating case, and why, you know, I'm sure, you know, people wanted to hear cases like this, because as frustrating as they are, they're really interesting too. So,
yes. This is definitely crazy.
I don't know what to think.
I don't either.
There are so many things for and against him.
Yeah. I think that if they did test all of that evidence and they did find that something was wrong, then it would kind of set like a precedence for basically every person who has been incarcerated in the 60s and 70s, because blood evidence was treated so differently back then. It was based on blood type, and multiple people have the same blood types, and you can't tell one blood from another other than the blood type without further DNA testing. And I think that if they did the further DNA testing and they were like, okay, so maybe this blood type AB positive, for instance, you know, this is just an example, that was Colette's blood type, but found in the kid's room, was not even hers, and it was some other random person.
One of the possible intruders.
Right. But then every single murder suspect who had been convicted would then need all of their evidence tested or be let out.
It would set a precedent.
And I think it's easier for the police to just say, okay, maybe we put one innocent person behind bars, but what about all these guilty people? We can't let them all out.
That's true. Maybe that's why the request to have that DNA tested was denied.
Yeah.
There's no other reason why it would have been denied.
Yeah, I really don't know what I think.
I don't either.
I think it's weird that
there's so much weirdness. Like, I
Helena
painted it in a certain way, so you would think guilty, 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 and then what the fuck?
Yeah. I think it's weird that Helena says that the reason is because she wanted the use of, you know, him to sign the prescriptions. But he doesn't even be
able to get their narcotics. Yeah.
But he didn't say that he knew them. Yeah. I feel like if that was the case, then he'd be like, it's those people who wanted me to sign their prescriptions all those times that I said no to. Exactly. But he didn't know them. So that makes me feel like it wasn't them.
Group, or it was a particular group and they sent other members. Like, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's hard to know. You also think that, like, and I know nothing about military bases, but it just seems insane to me that something like this could potentially happen.
I was thinking about that, actually. And again, it's everything is different in the 60s and the 70s. Bases used to kind of
serial killers got away with everything, guys.
Yeah, well, military bases, people used to be able to just come and visit and see what it's like and drive through. Oh. And ever since 9/11, you are not allowed on a military base without proper identification.
Interesting. So that's why they were surveilling everybody that went in and out of the base after that was reported.
So usually that's what we do anyway. Like, that was one of my main jobs. Was I was a gate guard. I sat at the, entrance point of the base, and any person who tried to come through, they'd have to stop their car like a police checkpoint, and I have to check their ID to make sure they have a reason for being on base. And I was kind of thinking too, like, how could these random people just get on base? But it's the fucking 70s. Like, security wasn't what it was.
Like, a lot of these people lived there. Like, the mailman saying that, like, it was a 17-year-old local girl. Like, to me, that indicates that she lived on base.
Yeah, that's possible.
So, who knows? This, guys, I would, again, encourage you guys to read the court transcripts. I just told you what was admissible, what wasn't, and various testimonies or confessions throughout the years. But the way that the case unravels is insane. I personally don't think that Jeffrey MacDonald got a fair trial. So even if he is guilty, I think that certain things should be admissible in court because they are fairly significant, like him being of sound psychological mind, things like that. Who knows? Like,
that's my issue with it. What was the motive?
Yeah, if anything, what was the motive?
I feel that, I don't know,
No, but in this
could never
case
be on a
specifically,
jury.
I couldn't either. It would stress us out.
Because
so
even
much
a
anxiety.
teeny bit of doubt to me is reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
And I have reasonable doubt in this case.
I have
so
reasonable doubt in this case, too.
I couldn't say he should go to jail.
I hate it. Thank you so much, Be In Your Truth, for suggesting this case, as well as voting on this topic. Sierra has another topic, or special topic case coming next week for, whodunit. Let us know your theories as per usual. Me and Sierra are both just kind of quiet because we don't really know what to think, and it's frustrating.
It's hard.
And we could talk about it forever, but, we don't want to bore our twisted humans with our wild speculation. So
we would just keep going back and forth.
That's true.
We don't have
We
an
could be
answer.
like, but what about this? But what about this?
Yeah.
So I hope I did it justice, and that you guys enjoyed the episode. Just a reminder, if you did, to rate, review, and subscribe on whatever channel you listen on, specifically Apple Podcasts. 195 of you downloaded it on Apple Podcasts. I'm talking to all of you. You leave those 5-star reviews, pretty please, and thank you. Right now, till the end of August, Sierra and I are doing a merch draw. So every positive review that we get, you get entered into a draw to win a merch item of your choice. So whoever the winner is, we'll let them have a look and decide what they want. If they want a sweater, a hoodie, a t-shirt, a tank top, or whatever. Some stickers, a wine glass, anything. If you can't leave a rating and review, or if you already have and you want to recommend us to a family member or a friend, that is a huge compliment. Most podcasts spread word of mouth. I tell, some of Sierra's new favorite podcasts are because I recommended them, and vice versa. So
tag us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook to your friends.
Yeah, shout us out. And if you want to help the show even further, we've got lots of bonus content, ad-free episodes, monthly segments, all sorts of fun. We also have lots of welcome goodies on there too, so we will send that your way when you sign up. And send us your spooky stories as per usual. We've got a couple in the mix for Listener Stories Volume 3. Listener Stories Volume 2 will be released this month, I promise, guys, if my life depends on it.
Yep. So happy July 20th, everyone. Today we will celebrate that on this day in 1969, the first human walked on the moon.
What?
Or not, if you believed it was a fake conspiracy. Whatever you think.
I love it. Let us know what you think about this insane case. And about the moon, for that matter. Let us know your theory on that. We'll see you guys next week for a new episode. And in the meantime,
keep it twisted.
Thank you for listening to Twisted and Uncorked Podcast. Remember, if you like the show, to go leave us a 5-star rating and review. We couldn't do it without you guys. Now stay tuned to hear about another cool podcast.
Do you love true crime, but are looking for something different?
It sounds like a sitcom.
It does.
The Benders.
The kind of assholes, you should probably leave them alone.
Do you like learning about cases so off the wall they can't possibly be true?
Her wig is enormous, but it is lifted off her head by a monkey.
Do you love history, but want to hear about what they didn't teach you in school? It's just got a almost where you hang your horns sign.
Do you like laughing awkwardly about cases that are bizarre and a little strange?
They'd be able to wield so many knives with all of their little arms. Then we have the podcast for you. Join me, Lindsay.
And me, Madison, for Ye Old Crime,
where we discuss the funny, strange, and obscure crimes of yesteryear.
Listen every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
And we'll see you next time with another tale
as old as crime.